Hi, I'm Alan Coffey, and I'm driven to know. Today we will explore All Information is Not Created Equal, Part 2. Now, before we get started, got a little housekeeping I want to get out of the way really quickly here. I'm running a fundraiser on Facebook for this channel at YouTuber at Driven to Know, or you can support me through PayPal at the pinned link below this video. Last time we saw, talking about all information is not created equal. Last time we saw that far too many people are deceived by bad information, and that's due to several factors that we talked about. The human brain, bad sources of information masquerading as good sources of information, and the malicious intentions of con men, grifters, and other persons out to deceive for fun, political gain, or even profit. Well, profit probably is the more common reason to do things. And we spent our time last time talking about the brain and its flaws in our natural thought processes. We talked about how we're prone to confirmation bias, believing and telling stories as opposed to facts, figures, statistics, and that sort of thing. And agenticity, seeing agents involved in everything that goes on around us, that everything is under the control of someone or something. And tribalism, us versus them. And we'll talk about all these things more as we continue in our series. The cognitive flaws, though, that we looked at are the tools that act on information to create conspiracy theories like those hawked by QAnon and so many other people these days. Anti-vaxxers, people who believe in all sorts of pseudoscientific medical theories like Ayurvedic medicine and also homeopathy. We'll be looking at bad sources of information today, though, masquerading as good sources of information. And this is the first part of what's going to take a couple videos probably to cover adequately. First of all, let's talk about what truth is. Because we can't talk about mis or disinformation until we define what truth or reality is. You know, one of my goals as a person and as someone involved in making this channel is I have a personal relationship with reality that I want to increase and grow every day, because reality is really what we're all about. Let's talk about what truth is, because we can't talk about misinformation or disinformation before we define what truth or reality actually is. Truth boils down to facts. Does the statement or proposition actually factually represent the real nature and characteristics of the idea, thing, person, event, or phenomenon being described? That's my personal definition of truth. I came up with that on my own. That's my personal definition. Another good one is from science fiction author Philip K. Dick. Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. And here's some other useful definitions of truth. Truth is the property of being in accord with fact or reality. Truth is usually held to be the opposite of falsity. That's from, of all places, Wikipedia. Truth, conformity to knowledge, fact, actuality. A statement proven or accepted as true, not false or erroneous. Things as they really are, rather than as they merely appear to be. Reality insofar as it may be focused in thought, word, or deed. That's from Linda Elder. In a glossary of critical thinking terms and concepts. Foundation for Critical Thinking. That's an outfit that I would recommend you get involved with and learn from them. And the third definition I have here is truth, the clearest possible understanding people can achieve of the world in which we live. And that's from Bill Cook. Let's talk now about truth and information, or the lack thereof. Questions of truth and falsehood are bound up in the question of bad sources versus good sources of information. Bad sources of information promote, publish, proclaim, or otherwise put forth information that is either entirely untrue or contains various degrees of untruth, usually designed to make you think that what you're getting is true, but not really. And in a lot of ways, that's the most dangerous kind of propaganda or false truth that you can find. Put another way, bad sources promote information that is inaccurate, false, or partially true while claiming not to. It reminds me of something I've said oftentimes about the grocery business in which I spent a number of years working. It reminds me that if I have to tell you how friendly my store is probably not very friendly. So remember that. If I have to keep telling you how truthful everything I am and how I am telling you the truth and no one else is telling you the truth, there's a good possibility I'm probably not being exactly the most truthful person in your life. I hate to rain on Fox News, but I'm going to do it right now when they say, we report, you decide, and we're telling you the truth. A lot of times they're actually not telling you the truth. Now, such sources make claims about events, persons, and motivations of persons that are not true and can be demonstrated to not be true. And this is important because in sources of information, Philip K. Dick reminds us that the basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use them. In other words, if you let a bad source of information define for you the terms in which you can discuss a particular idea, item, or phenomenon, then they have defined it wrongly for you. Now, the words that are used by purveyors of untruth are the tools of deception themselves. So we have to figure out how we can determine whether or not information is true. I have the first part of a multiple part test, but this first part of this test is I call it the 3-part test. The first test of any information we have doubts about has 3 parts. I just said that. Is it possible? Is it plausible? And finally, is it probable? Now, I find this test helpful because so many of the falsehoods people believe rapidly unravel when approached using these questions. Possibility is the largest category. It encompasses virtually anything. You've heard the saying that anything is possible. Well, anything is possible, but not everything is plausible or even probable. And in a real sense, just about anything is possible under the right conditions, outside barring physical laws of the universe. Possible means what can happen, not necessarily what will happen or what is likely to happen. And in considering what is possible versus what is probable, we have to be able to construct a consistent, accurate, and likely chain of events or actions that would lead to the anything that we talked about, anything is possible, actually happening. If you can work backwards and find a chain of consistent behavior, consistent ideas, then we need to take a look at that, because the likely chain of events or actions that would lead to anything actually happening, we have to look at that because this chain of events or actions establishes plausibility. And plausibility shows evidence of being true. That's what that word plausibility means. Plausibility establishes, is this a realistic prospect? If not, the event is unlikely to happen. So if you can't establish a chain of plausible events leading up to this, or plausible causes leading up to this, or plausible influences leading up to whatever the proposition is that's out there before you, then it's probably not likely to happen. So, what would this look like? Well, let's talk about meteorites. I think we all know what a meteorite is. It's a rock that hurtles in from outer space, gets caught in the atmosphere, catches fire as it re-enters, and whatever's left that hits the ground, that's the meteorite. When it's in the sky, it's a meteor, and when it's outside the atmosphere, it's a meteoroid. Okay? So you have meteoroid, meteor, which is the big streak of light in the sky, and then when it hits the ground, that's a meteorite, what's left over. And we've all seen pictures of craters, maybe even actually been to the craters, and we've seen the streaks of light in the sky. But how probable or likely is it that you or I might actually be struck by a meteorite? It's actually very unlikely, even though we can construct a chain of plausibility. We could come up with a series of events that would likely show us being hit by a meteorite. But it's unlikely because there's only one case in the last 100 years in the USA. From November 2019, this report in the Cincinnati Enquirer talks about the only person in the 20th or the 21st century in the United States that has been struck by a meteorite. our friend Dean Regis writes this: tons of falling space rocks sounds really scary, but how many people are struck and killed by meteorites each year? In the last 100 years, the answer to both questions is 0. In fact, there is only one case of a human being being hit by a meteorite in the 20th and 21st century, and she lived. The unlucky victim, was Ann Hodges of Sicklakaga, Alabama. In 1954, she was lying on the couch taking a nap when a softball-sized piece of rock broke through the ceiling, bounced off her radio, and hit her on her left side. Despite having minor injuries and one heck of a bruise, Hodges lived to tell the tale. The space rock, now known as the Hodges meteorite, is owned by the Smithsonian Institution. And I seem to remember seeing it the one time I got to go to the Smithsonian. So the probability of you or I being hit by a meteorite, while at least certainly possible, is highly improbable, to say the least, even if we could construct that chain of plausibility that we talked about earlier. And were I to claim otherwise, it would be easy to reason out why it's not true. And that's why this 3-part test is so helpful. First of all, is it possible? Second of all, is it plausible? And third of all, is it probable? And probability comes down not just to the basis of plausibility, but are there any other examples we can look back on and say, hey, this has happened? But it's not the only test for rooting out bad information. In fact, we're going to talk about some other tests for rooting out bad information the next time we get together here on Driven to Know. And as I close out the video for today, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like everything I do, this is a work in progress, and hopefully it's getting progressively more clean and sharp every time I put one up. If you liked today's video, if you enjoyed it, click the like button below and subscribe. And also, if I'm going to pay the bills, please support me on PayPal. The link in the pinned comments below. Now, I'm running a fundraiser right now on Facebook for this channel, as I mentioned at the beginning, at YouTuber at Driven to Know. You can support me through PayPal or the pin link that's below, or you can go to my fundraiser on Facebook and support me there. But whatever you do, I have to pay the bills just like everybody else does, and this is what I'm trying to do that. That's why I'm Alan Coffey, and I'm Driven to Know.